Girl, shock me like an electric eel. This is like the Justice remix of Electric Feel by MGMT. We have electric grapplers. Makhachev taking on Malcolm Gordon. Fellow Canadian is Malcolm Gordon, and he's also a former TKO flyweight champ. He got the win over Yoni Sherbatov a few years ago. Former Ultimate Fighter contestant and Laval, Quebec, Canada gym owner, Yoni Sherbatov. If you want that background, to share that at Buffalo Wild Wings with your buddies when you're watching the prelims of UFC 280. But if you can't tell how excited I am about this fight, it's up there. It's like a 9.5 out of 10. I love the title fights. They're 10s, but I love this matchup as well because for Malcolm Gordon, he's been an underdog in multiple fights in the UFC. He was a plus 115 against Amir Albazi, a plus 290 against Sumaderji. He got finished in both of those fights. Plus 245 against Francisco Figueiredo, and a plus 230 against Denis Bondar. And in those last two fights, he beat Figueiredo by decision. He beat Denis Bondar in a fight where Bondar looked like he had some octagon jitters. They get into the grappling. Bondar gets a takedown. They kind of wrestle. They scramble. And then Bondar's posted up. And I talk about it twice. I will during all of these videos for these fights because Gadzhi Omargadzhiev, Caio Borralho posted up on that left hand. Illegal knee by Caio Borralho. Denis Bondar posts up with his left hand. Malcolm Gordon puts a little bit of weight on, and Denis's elbow crumples like bad paper mache.
It reminded me of that. I don't know why Sportsnet, we were growing up, decided to show this replay like 50 times, but I just remember Andrew Bogut going up for a layup, his arm getting stuck on the backboard, and then him falling like Peter Griffin on a sling set. And for some reason, they showed that highlight every 4 minutes growing up.
But for Malcolm Gordon, he probably watches that with his bowl of cereal every morning because this guy had a great win. He picks up that finish, and it is off to the races. Now, for Gordon, he gets Mokaev, a guy who you talk about off to the races. He gets a quick win over Cody Durden in his UFC debut. His next time out, he gets Charles Johnson, and you might think, hey, Mokaev had so much success in the wrestling against Charles Johnson that Johnson was just a fish out of water. Reel that fish in a little bit because Charles Johnson, I talked about it, he was like a steeplechase champion. He was a wrestling champion. He won a Tiger Muay Thai scholarship. Charles Johnson was a former LFA champ at flyweight as well. Johnson's a good fighter. You're going to see him compete in the UFC. But it really is a nice feather in the cap of Mokaev to have a win that caliber. I know he didn't get the finish. I know just like GSP before he fought Matt Hughes, like I was not impressed with my performance or his performance, but I thought that Mokaev looked really good in that matchup, and it showed me even more that the guy has a nice, not just skill set, but a gas tank to go along with the skill set, that it isn't just, live or die by the sword in the first round for Mokaev.
And his striking has impressed me at the UFC level throughout his tenure, because I really assumed in watching the tape leading up to his debut, it was a lot of explosiveness, but was there really that technique behind it when he wasn't landing those big shots? But I'll be honest, I really do feel like Mokaev has taken that step up since he has gotten to the big show. Now, I know that's an easy thing to say, and of course Malcolm Gordon, he's a well-rounded mixed martial artist. He's going to test that one area of your game that you don't have confidence in, and hopefully he can at least make this fight go long enough to where we learn a lot more about Muhammad Mokaev. Because Mokaev at this point, I know people who barely watch MMA who have asked me about him, and I gotta be honest, I don't know a lot of people who are just kind of casual MMA fans. They're either 2 feet in or 2 feet out. But I have had people ask me about this Muhammad Mokaev guy because he fought on that UFC London card. And I gotta be honest, that UFC London card for Fredericton, New Brunswick people, I have no idea why they watch these cards. But I got stopped at a grocery store 2 weeks ago asking about Paddy Pimblett, okay? People in our side of the country love those London cards. So I would really try to promote a lot more of your prospects on them. But this is what I keep on falling back to because we've talked a lot about Malcolm Gordon on this channel. And honestly, we've talked a decent amount about Muhammad Mokaev. What's the one area of Gordon's game where he can actually challenge Mokaev in and make the fight very close? Because I do think his pure wrestling can make it a little bit interesting in some of the exchanges. I just don't know how sustainable that's going to be. I can see him having some success and then ending up on the bottom. And I just don't know what the one area of his game is where he can have a lot of success.
I have one. There's one area that Malcolm Gordon's better at Muhammad Mokaev at, and it's his boxing. When Malcolm Gordon decides that he wants to go out there and not go balls to the wall, which is when he has the most success, and also it's when he loses fights. Malcolm Gordon's got this kill switch that he just lets off at the first part of most of his fights, and he usually ends up losing. But if you reel it back in, you look at Malcolm Gordon when he's having success in the Canadian regional scene, when he's fighting Francisco Figueiredo, when he's fighting against Denis Bondar before they get into the grappling exchanges. Gordon, when he's purely boxing, he's got really long arms for this division. You can see it from the graphic. He's got a 1-inch reach advantage over Mokaev. I think that's going to cancel itself out because Mokaev is a big-time kicker, and he has a lot of success from distance. So when I'm just saying that I think that Malcolm Gordon has a boxing advantage, it's probably not going to play out that way, but just hear me out, because he throws really good 1-2s. He throws from a very, very long, range, and if you look at it, he can double and triple up on his jab, and he has a lot of success with his boxing. So Gordon, very good with his boxing, very good with his wrestling against 95% of UFC flyweights, which there are 18 unranked flyweights right now signed to the division. So it's not like it's just like women's featherweight and there's nobody competing. There are actually a lot of flyweights right now, contrary to like 2018. But for Mokaev, he's putting on a 31-fight undefeated streak. He was 23-0 as an amateur, multiple-time IMMAF world champ against very good competition. As a pro, undefeated except for that one no contest, but you just kind of put that to the wayside and you continue on. But for Mokaev, coming out of KHK MMA, the Kingdom of Bahrain, for Malcolm Gordon, coming out of Adrenaline MMA, and I saw it over on his Instagram, he's got Chris Horodecki in his corner. You're going to see him there. Obviously, Mark Hominick's trained out of that gym, and Bazooka Joe Valtellini, but Horodecki, definitely a guy to get ready for the striking, 100%. A guy that was really flashy with his kicks back in the WEC days, a guy who retired super young after fighting Cowboy Cerrone. Like, I wish we got more out of Horodecki, but when you do focus in on this matchup, Matt, we know how good that the Wigan product in Mohamed Mokaev is, the Wigan, Manchester adjacent guy. This is one of those matchups where it feels like all of the strengths are turned up a little bit more for the younger fighter.
It really does, because I do think Malcolm Gordon can at least make it competitive in a lot of areas in this fight. I don't think, the fight gets to the mat, he just gets washed because he doesn't have the grappling defense. Like, I do respect his grappling enough so that in some of these exchanges, I think he can be competitive. But it's like if you play enough 2K. There's a stat in 2K at the end, if you go all the way to the end, not your three-point shot, not your driving dunk. It's called intangibles. Malcolm Gordon's intangibles would be at like 50, let's say. Mohamed Mokaev's intangibles are probably at like 90, because he really does have that type of wrestling, the explosiveness, and the youth on his side too. Like, 32 isn't that old, let's be honest. Mohamed Mokaev's a decade younger than Malcolm Gordon is. Like, he's that young. He's going to get that much better each and every time we see him. Think about Tatsuro Taira, the guy we saw last weekend. They could fight each other, which is kind of wild, and I think that would be an insane prospect fight, but hopefully the UFC lets that matchup marinate for a little bit longer. Let it be like a Shavkat versus Khamzat Chimaev, where hopefully they just meet each other at the top and not outside the rankings. But I do have Mokaev in this matchup. It's really difficult to pick against a guy who's almost a, 7-1 favorite in this matchup.
I mean, Mokaev is just more than a 7-1 favorite. Malcolm Gordon on the comeback, plus 500 or thereabouts. Topology votes, I'm not even going to try and guess.
I'm going to say they're over 97%.
Yeah, they're probably, they're under.
One under.
1,096 total votes, 96% Mokaev, 67% by submission for the 4% that have Gordon, 35% by knockout, 40% by decision. But for me, I think Mokaev wins this one. I wouldn't be as confident as everybody else is in picking him to win by submission against Gordon, because I think Gordon has decent enough submission defense. His takedown defense is all right. His offensive wrestling is very good. His boxing is good. But I think Mokaev, with the kicks, with the advances in his boxing, and I really think the way that Mokaev cuts angles versus Gordon very much is push forward, hunt for the neck, try and get the takedown. Mokaev is going to try and cut angles and attack you from odd spots. I think Mokaev's got the edge there, and I do like the cardio that I've seen in his recent fight.
That's the thing. It feels like every time you have one of these like top tier prospects, the two questions is, can they eat a punch? Because we never see them take a good shot. They're so good. And how does their cardio hold up? For Mokaev, I don't know how he's going to eat a power shot against a guy like Piotr Jan or against a guy like Davison Figueiredo if he does make it to the top of the flyweight division. But at least we have one of those two questions answered. I think that's a great point. We know how good his cardio is going to last with his explosive and very physically demanding style. So I do like Mokaev in this matchup, but hopefully Gordon can just last long enough to make us think more about Mokaev.
Watch the fight that Abdul Hussein had against Mohamed Mokaev. I'm going to talk about it in every single Mokaev fight, but there's a blueprint right there, and people go, oh, the guy's no good. Finland's got no good prospects. Go watch some Abdul Hussein fights, Matt. Both of us going with Mohamed Mokaev, the Punisher. Is he Thomas Jane? I don't know, but he's got a good opportunity at getting a win coming up this weekend. Let us know who you have in this matchup, and the rest of the matchups on this 14-fight card. You're going to want to keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.